go.
All right, I'll kick this one off since, just so everybody knows, if you watch this episode in future dates, today is Halloween. Okay,
It is a spooky episode, spectacular today too.
So we're going to talk about some spooky industry things, but I didn't plan ahead very well because I definitely was not planning on being on our national podcast dressed like an idiot. But hopefully you enjoy the gladiator costume.
We have a costume fashion show with a runway downstairs that'll be taking place right as soon as we wrap up this episode.
Yep, we got to participate in all the fun corporate culture activities. So
yep, so
Dan's dressed as a stressed out CEO of an FMO.
I'm
All right, well, let's go, Dan. Let's kick it off. We wanted to talk about three things today. The first, it's, OEP for ACA is kicking off, and we just had
it's OE, remember, Open Enrollment.
OE, yeah. OEP, OE. We had our annual kickoff 2 days ago. Man, the days are all blurring together.
Yeah, 2 days ago we had, just like we did with Medicare, we had an ACA kickoff. It's nice because in our building, in our space, for those of you who've been here, we have really nice facilities on the common floor area. We have a big auditorium. It opens up. We have big open areas where we can host like a marketplace event. We have a big cafeteria. We're able to provide like food and everything just right here on site. So we typically don't have to rent, go off site, pay for event centers, all that kind of stuff. So we're able to kind of accommodate and just do everything like that on site. Yeah. It's been a game changer for us.
Yeah, we had probably 200 different brokers and carrier partners here on site, and then people watched it streaming. And if you watch the stream, it was better than our Medicare stream, and that's thanks to Dan's clever little creation. I was a little bit of a doubter, but
it'll get better.
Well,
it'll keep getting better. So, my volunteer time in high school football and streaming and doing film has been paying off.
I'm very proud of you. You have a big camera now with a nice lens, and computers and tech equipment, and my film production side of me is very happy for you. I'm impressed.
Well, hey, it's going to apply to the business now.
Yep.
You will see an increase in quality.
And we got Mosiah. He's killing it with the last few episodes of the podcast. Happy to be cranking stuff out.
Yeah, and I will say, so to kind of summarize the event, we had carriers here in our backyard that had all kind of flown in. Typically we don't really have that many, I guess you would say, like leadership folks in our backyard in Utah, so they typically have to come here. We really like spending time with our carrier partners, so we do like being able to go to dinner, entertain, go do something fun. Caught the hockey game with our Ambetter partners on Monday night. Tuesday night, we're able to go to dinner with one of our Aetna leaders. It was in here for our ACA kickoff, so long days and a lot of planning and everything else. But the event did turn out great. I mean, we got great feedback from both the brokers and the carriers, and more than anything, we had it structured throughout just one day, where we're in this window shopping period, and if you're big into selling marketplace, you really understand that you don't really understand what the product's going to look like. You don't understand what the premiums are going to be.
It's kind of like the Medicare plans this year, almost.
Yeah, it's kind of like surprise. Like you hear like little whispers about what's going to happen, but then you really don't understand like benefit-wise how things are shaking out until about now. And so it was exciting being here and the carriers coming to market, and they hadn't announced some of their bonuses or for like retention bonus or new business bonuses, and having them kind of announce some of those or come to market and show their cards, play their hand. That was kind of fun. So we think the timing was great of doing the event. And like I said, we just knocked it all out in one day. Carriers typically got, we kind of kicked it off and kind of set the tone from a macro level of what we're expecting from the marketplace this year. I guess you would say best practices for some of the agents. And then we had some segments where we talked about leads and technology, how to really use that to scale your business and be effective. And then the carriers all had 30 minutes to, take the spotlight and talk about their products or company philosophy.
Yeah, we had Health Sherpa out as well. We've got a great relationship with them. Their team, George, CEO, Adam, Jordan, and Marie Menjivar actually lives here in Utah. So she is one of the national reps that does live here in our backyard. And it was cool to have her down. And they talked about and rolled out that, I think it's important to highlight, they have that new tool, that new mechanism to verify rather than having to call into CMS. So that is functioning at this current time.
Yep.
More details to come on that. We'll talk about it specifically in depth on the podcast, and probably even do some more training videos as well on that.
Yeah, and just FYI, if you're listening, we are going to start. We've begun slowly to start streaming those events and put more emphasis and quality into those events. So again, get in touch with us if you'd like, and look for future events. We're not restricting that to just our contracted agents. We're opening it up to everybody. Again, it's one of those things that we feel like we do as far as just being a critical part of the industry and providing value to, I guess you'd say the whole ecosystem of the supply chain. Our role is to train, teach, empower, oversee compliance, of course, whether they say it or not, achieve sales, distribution, but it's just one of the things that we do. And so there's going to be a lot of opportunities coming in this next year as well.
What were some of your key takeaways from, I guess, the ACA? Let's catch up. We haven't talked a lot about the ACA industry, but
I have a couple of them.
What are some of the things one of the things I've noticed is it's been nice to see the evolution of the industry even faster than we kind of thought.
Yep.
We've been talking and complaining about a lot of the pain points that Dan and I kind of thought was going to happen over 3 years that really kind of happened over 6 or 8 months. And so it does seem like we're more optimistic about the ACA industry than I think we were 6 months ago.
Yeah, I would say that a couple observations that I have. The first would be that in general still, we're not getting enough of the agent distribution and the sales distribution paying attention and being consistently engaged, because to your point, I think 75% of the moves that we thought we were going to see implemented over a 2 or 3 year horizon happened this year and changed more rapidly. And so when you have that sort of rapid change, it requires that agent to really be focused and, at the wheel, so to speak, every week in, week out, being in the business. And I was surprised at how many agents are like, oh, they announced call recording for coming in 2026. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't know that. Or, oh, that tool is working now for verification. I don't have to call CMS. Oh, I didn't know that. I mean, there was a lot of brokers who are producers, and they just were not aware of all the changes that were happening. That was one big takeaway that I had.
Yeah. However, I do think that we saw more, I guess let's call them traditionally Medicare agents, kind of opening up or warming up to the idea of doing Medicare. And I think the caliber of agents is increasing, because what we saw on the ACA side was there's been a handful of really good ACA agents that have been able to be really successful over the past, 5 or 6 years, that have grown big books of business. And there's still a lot of opportunity on the ACA side. Shout out to one of our childhood friends that he got in the industry and we've been helping, and he's already built a book of business. We were just looking at it yesterday, of over 600 active policies in like 8 months,
in a year,
10 months, and making great cash and keeps growing like crazy. And so he's
and I will say
he's
doing it right. Like, he communicates with his people. They're actually his clients. They weren't just randoms that he did an enrollment on. He's doing a great job. I noticed that. I will say a couple of the things that were topics at our kickoff that I'm happy to brush on is a few things. Number one, I do think for the marketplace trends, and we're talking about ACA because, of course, tomorrow it's game on. It's OE, right? We're on it. I would say we saw a lot of stability. We saw that the marketplace in general plans, they had gone up by 6% on average in 2024. They're looking to have pricing increases across the board of about 7% for next year. So there's a lot of stability. We have those enhanced subsidies that are still rolling. I really firmly believe that regardless of who we have as an administration coming out of this, that either way, we're going to get those enhanced subsidies renewed, whether
Correct.
It's a negotiation point, whether there's some give and take, some partisanship there. But I don't want to talk about that too much because I don't want to get blocked or banned on this episode. But I will say that I think those get renewed either way. So that's good. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because the outlook for that as a line of business is very positive. Like, we're very optimistic about it.
I think it's interesting too that, and this is the next segment of what we're going to talk about, is the growth and the appetite of these insurance carriers to grow on the ACA side. They want the enrollments. They want to grow. It seems like they're increasing the amount of dollars. They're upping commissions a little bit. They're doing bonuses and things like that. And so the viability, I think, is in a really good place. and hopefully a lot of the fraud, waste, and craziness that was going on at OE last year is really going to be tempered down this year, which I think it will. So
when we had some of the bigger bad actors that were dealt with, whether it be civilly with lawsuits too, or terminations from carriers, so I think that helped clean it up a little bit. And not only from taking those people out of the industry, but just also sending a message to people that, like, the buck stops here and now we're going to actually follow this. So
yep, there's accountability, there's eyes on it. You can't operate in the shadows, basically.
Yeah, so I think that's helped, obviously. One thing that I would call, attention to is I think there's enough noise now about all the policyholders that have a 9-digit ITIN instead of a Social Security number. I think for agencies and agents that are writing that business, that goes away. For sure that goes away no matter the administration. I don't see that continuing, especially as things become more sophisticated, things get clamped down. So if you're listening, enjoy that free money while it lasts, but I don't think that those policyholders are going to be able to stick around much longer. Just FYI, I wouldn't even plan on it for January. And then another thing that I would continue we did an episode talking about, ICRA already this year, but I see ICRA being another really big growth segment when we're talking about marketplace. The family glitch was a big, driver and, helped to spike up the enrollments in the marketplace. And ICRA will continue to be really big. And that's a nice cost shift, away from employers, getting people onto the marketplace. And I think you're going to see a lot of popularity, specialization there. Carriers are going to understand it more, build products, marketing, trainings behind it. And if you're not savvy and up to speed with ICRA, like, we'll obviously do another podcast episode and we'll do trainings and dig in deep. But I think that's very much something else that we highlighted as well that agents should start familiarizing themselves with.
Yeah, I'm bullish on ICRA too, for sure. I definitely think that's going to further eat in, especially to these smaller and mid-sized businesses. That's going to make a lot of sense, and it's going to be an opportunity for agents to add a lot of heads really quickly and efficiently. And I think you're going to see some massive growth there too as well.
Yeah, and I think to some of the last points, just kind of summarizing, our kickoff and what it was like for those of you who didn't, listen or attend. We also started talking about just, incorporating the fraud element to it, the technology, the viability of it. Just, we've been talking about that line of business getting, having that growth and what would have to change from a regulatory perspective. And it happened really quickly. So the industry and the carriers are going to expect more value out of agents and more sophistication. And so we did continue to talk about, you can't just, the days of just being able to talk to a consumer and say, oh, you're making $60,000 a year. Well, let's fib on your application here. Let's say you make 40 so that you're under that income requirement. We're just going to write an application, submit it for an SCP, and then that person's going to get screwed on their taxes a year later. That poor quality of business and writing everybody on a bronze, that's gone. Those days are gone, and the carriers are already starting to implement bonuses only for certain like metal tiers like silver and gold. They're already starting to look at trends and accretion. What I'm telling you all is that if you're an agent doing those practices, it's going to be short-lived because they're catching on to it, and they're going to want you to do more quality business. And you need to be asking people for needs analysis and where they're accessing care, and are they taking meds, and do you want to have a higher deductible with a lower monthly premium, or do you want to swap that, and do you have like a lot of medical conditions, and do you want to have a higher monthly premium with a lower MOOP? Agents need to be having sophisticated conversations with their clients and providing real value, not just 5 minutes, 10 minutes on the phone and throwing them into any plan they possibly can, even if they're not committing fraud. And so that is something that we focused on, being a real agent and providing that quality, because if we all want viability in this industry and longevity, we need to start doing all that stuff. And I say we at Agent Boost have always been doing those things, but collectively, you all as an industry need to be doing those things as well.
Yeah, so another interesting thing you mentioned, going to lunch with or going to dinner with Aetna and some of our carrier partners. And one thing that I want to, make crystal clear is The ACA and the Medicare side of things, there's much less crossover than I think a lot of people understand. These companies almost function, even though the name is the same, they essentially function as almost two separate different companies, right? I mean, there are carriers where we have a fantastic relationship on the Medicare side and almost non-existent on the ACA side, and vice versa.
Correct.
And one of the things that I think makes us different at Agent Boost is we really have a lot of those top national relationships that most entities don't. You've either been traditionally an ACA shop or a Medicare shop or an ACA agent or a Medicare agent, and there hasn't been a lot of crossover. And I think we are one of the first to really successfully wrap that in together and have those relationships. But, for example, Aetna's having a tough year on the Medicare side and financially, and we're going to talk about it in a minute and pump the brakes on Medicare. But on the ACA side of things, they're looking really great, want to grow, want to add all this business, really well positioned, So that's really interesting. And I think for you agents out there and you agency owners, it's important to understand that, just because you might be a big deal with the carrier on the Medicare side or ACA vice versa, there's generally not a lot of crossover there. They treat those lines of business almost completely separately.
Agreed. And I think as I'm kind of having like last thoughts or wrap ups, just to kind of summarize ACA and, our kickoff, obviously compliance was a topic, again, going back to you're going to have call recording, go figure, and a lot of that's been an element from the fraud, right? Mm-hmm. To where now they're saying, hey, if you're going to do an enrollment over the phone, it's got to be recorded. For us, we go, well, yeah, that's a novel idea. It should have been that way from day one, right? But
you have to have permission. You have to have consent. You have to have verifiable enrollment source. Whoa, weird.
Right. So that's coming for 2026. So I think it was just too soon to implement like right away. But obviously for next OE, that will be a criteria. Well, we're already positioned to do that. We already have CRM and technology, and we provide that and do all that anyway. So it's free for all of our agents, and that's been one of the things that we've been, obviously telling the carrier partners is we're fans of this. We like that. And then scripting. They haven't announced official call scripting yet, but I'm just telling everybody it's coming.
It's turning into Medicare quicker than we thought.
And so, and even if it's not, I advised everybody, even if there's not some word for word scripting, you ought to at least have an enrollment and a call checklist to where, there's elements of the phone call with your intro, disclosing or saying who you are, how you're able to be contacted or reached, and you go through, find out and getting a needs analysis from them. And then you go to the part where you're making a plan recommendation, and then obviously going to the presentation, sales process, enrollment, and next steps. It should be all very, at least be a good agent.
Yeah.
Bullet point those things out to where if you're on a phone call, like I always think, if my sales call was listened to somebody, would I be proud of that call or would I be embarrassed?
Yep.
Right. And so that's like the bigger thing is, just ask yourself that question. If somebody at an insurance company today listened to your phone calls or your enrollments, would you be proud or would you be embarrassed?
Yeah.
And I think that, the answer to that should dictate what you plan to do next.
Yeah. In the days of identifying plans and squatting and stealing in the ACA, they're done. If you're an agent that's still pushing the envelope there, use these best practices, change quickly, amend your ways, or you're going to be punished for sure.
Yeah. And last takeaway, benefits. I think like we've seen they're a pendulum, right? They're swinging back and forth. There's always regulation. There's funding environments. There's budgetary things that are happening, but the funding's great right now in the marketplace or in the ACA. But as we continue to move forward, just societally with healthcare and facilities and doctors and the cost of all that, it's expensive. And so what you'll find is those costs are out of control right now. And so plan design, I have a hard time thinking that benefits are going to get better year to year to year. They're going to be stagnant at best or more cost shifting to the consumers. So with that, another big trend has been ancillary benefits, right? And so that was another theme of our kickoff is you should have a portfolio of ancillary products and companies.
That's where I was going to go.
When you're presenting to your clients and you're talking to them, and agents I have seen over the years are sometimes hesitant to try to multi-sell or cross-sell or bundle sell because they're afraid of losing their sale. But the reality is your clients and customers, they want to have that conversation. And I think that when agents embrace that and start talking about dental and, hey, your thing only has preventive, and if you need implants or a bridge or X, Y, or Z, you need to have another dental coverage. Or, hey, your exposure here on your major med gives you a lot of exposure if you're hospitalized. Do you have enough money in the savings account to pay for that exposure? If not, you ought to look at this hospital indemnity plan. Or cancer runs in your family. Have you thought about that with a critical illness plan? So, I mean, I think, again, I always say an agent might always even think that those products are junk in their mind, but don't take that choice away from the consumer. At least have the conversation with them, offer it to them, incorporate that into your sales presentation. And when you do, you're going to find that you have anywhere from a 5 to some people a 20% attachment rate with all the products you're selling. I mean, we know some agents that like they're experts at it and they're selling it more than half of their clients. And what that does to your business, segmenting into what we're going to talk about with disruption in Medicare and commissions, but it just brings in more diversification, quality to your earnings, ability to pay for your marketing. It's really a great way to grow your business, and the opportunity to do it is better now than it ever has been.
Yeah, you kind of stole my whole segue. That's basically what I wanted to talk about too as we transition into here, guys, is, you know, there's a lot of noise out in the industry, and typically we think it's good for an agent to be, you know, learn one product, master one thing. It's hard for a new agent in the industry to come in and be like, I want to be all things to everybody. I want to be a great Medicare agent. I want to sell Advantage plans and SUPs and indemnities and all these cancer and critical illness, and I want to do all these things. It's best if you learn one and kind of move. But right now, more than ever, I think being a sophisticated agent and being able to do Medicare and ACA year round and being able to layer in these indemnities as well, that's the key to winning financially, to help you get a chance to build your book like you need to. But also, it's a hedge against being overly indexed in one area. And that's been a major lesson of this year for a lot of agents and entities, is they may have had things may have been great with one particular carrier or industry or area in the past or geographical area. And all of a sudden that whole plan or plans or carrier could up and leave the entire area. We've seen that big time this year.
Or say, I'm just not paying you commission.
Exactly. And so it causes a lot of disruption. I feel bad for a lot of these agents. Let's call them like the legacy field agents who have been loyal to one particular carrier plan, and they've built these massive books of business that are overly reliant on one carrier. And then you have a year like this year where they SAR a lot of those and you're basically just chasing your tail. It's very defeating. But if you're diverse, if you're, you're diversified in your sales practices and the products that you sell, you're going to be more protected when things kind of move. And that's the sophisticated agent that we're really trying to teach and develop right now. And we really feel like we're the best. Again, we don't like to always self-promote on this podcast, but we feel like we're the best in the industry right now to do that. And we know that we're having a lot of success with that because we're up 200%, year over year. We're crushing it. Our with amidst all of this chaos and all of the negativity, we've never had more opportunity and been more optimistic about a lot of things.
Agreed. So we should probably segue into, enough. We're just so everybody knows, we're going to do another episode where we're going to talk in depth about ACA, and we will do an episode talking about predictions and who we think is going to win, winners and losers from this OE coming up, because I have my couple of carriers that I think are going to be the big winners. I will also just throw it out here from early thoughts that I think Oscar is going to lose just because they're not on Health Sherpa and they made that decision. I know it's a financial reason, but I still think that that's going to hurt them more than they think. I could be wrong, but I'm going on the record saying that I think that's a very impactful decision that's going to hurt them more than they save financially from being on the platform.
Yeah.
I'll throw that out there first.
Well, transitioning into our next topic, we talked a little bit about it on the last episode, and Aetna had basically just announced that they were going to be suppressing some. Did it make it into the last episode?
No. So here's we need to start from let's back it up a little bit. Yeah. We wanted to kind of
that was earlier this week.
I mean, it's Halloween today, we all got places to be, and things to do, and it's a little chaotic, and Mike's over here in his costume, and we're ready to go. But I mean, the news is just too hot that we can't sit on this and not do an episode. So we've done the episode going into AEP where we talked about all the carriers and how on the Medicare side, and they had plans that were essentially, we're pulling out of these areas and we're doing a whole plan exit.
SARS, yeah.
But then we had another layer down where we were going to suppress certain plans and make them not available or not easily available for brokers to see or enroll. So those suppressed plans were not on Sunfire or Connecture. Now,
at
again,
the start of AEP.
Yeah,
and some carriers like United came out with a short list of a handful of kind of, I'll call them fringe plans for the most part, that were not profitable or excuse me, non-commissionable.
Yeah, exactly. But
both.
But we kind of had some of the carriers though. Look, I always say and appreciate that I appreciate the heads up. I appreciate the notification ahead of time. I appreciate someone saying, hey, we're partners. Things are rugged, but hey, this is going to be an element. It's going to be hard for us to deal with, but this is where the business is at. We got to deal with this. I appreciate that. Anyways, but you had your plan exits, then you had your suppressed plans, and then on some of those suppressed plans, it was like gray answers about whether you could still sell them and get a commission or not from some of the carriers. And then they also had some of those on their own proprietary internal platforms, and then others were only
on Medicare.gov.
Yeah, and only on paper applications. So we've talked about that in depth. What's happened though is even going in a couple weeks into AEP now, we already had Aetna come out and announce
that was 2 days ago, 3 days ago, yeah,
a slew of H codes and plans where they just said these plans are just not commissionable, and
suppressed in the text. So multi-quoting tools like Sunfire and Connecture, and Ascend and Health. I'm assuming Health Sherpa's new platform, right?
So they were plans that were available at the beginning of AEP just a few weeks ago. And then now suddenly, like drop of a dime, it's like almost no heads up. And it's immediately like, hey, just kidding. All these plans are not available. Because I'll say Aetna in specific, where we're at in the West, they pulled out of the state of Idaho entirely. They pulled out of the state of New Mexico entirely, just near us. And so like the Utah plans, both the HMO and the PPO are both non-commissionable. And it's like,
and that basically accounts for all of the plans that agents, and we have many agents, that's their entire writing portfolio with Aetna in the state.
Well, and so the whole point that I say is, you know what, you might as well have just pulled out, because at this point, we talk about it a lot. I mean, agents, they keep receipts. We keep receipts. We know what happens. And, they already said, hey, we're not paying PDP commissions moving forward. So now you already don't pay PDP commissions. You don't pay MA commissions, where they're going to keep paying renewals. But at that point, if you even try to next year, I'm just saying this, if you say next year, hey, our financials are kind of back and squared away and things look good, and we're going to turn commissions back on for you guys. All right, we're great. Well, I could go right now and ask 100 brokers in the marketplace and said, so are you going to sell them next year? What's the answer going to be?
Hell no. Yeah, like I don't trust those guys. It takes years to rebuild that credibility.
It does. And so that's the one thing that I think when these decisions are made, yeah, I understand the economic impact and the financials are bad. The provider relationships are bad. The V28, the reimbursement environment, the star cut points. I understand all of it, but the long-term effects of this, you're going to have brokers that will not write the product for 5 to 10 years or ever again based on this. So.
Yeah, I have a problem with it for a couple of reasons, and I actually have much more of a problem with it than even WellCare making their PDPs non-commissionable, because from a personal agent perspective and a business perspective, the revenue versus the work of doing a PDP only was very minimal anyway, and the revenue impact was very small. And I was a little bit more understanding and sympathetic to it with the fact that a lot of those carriers have state contracts and Medicaid contracts, and they get kind of force-fed some of the PDPs, and the Inflation Reduction Act specifically targeted and disproportionately affected that component of WellCare and the drug plans. And so I get that even a little bit more. But the MAPD to midstream and mid-AEP kind of go, oh, we're going to just shut these essentially down and all of a sudden start suppressing them and then not pay commission on them. I got a major issue with that for a couple reasons.
Right.
Number one, it, like Dan said, it does set a bad precedent in the industry, right? Like and these plans that are being suppressed, and we forgot to mention that Anthem, hot off the press,
I was going to go there next.
Just announced the same thing, basically.
About 2 hours ago.
And these are not non-consequential plans. They're not these, there were these specialty plans in these
it's a
slow
fringe
markets
where we had 600 members.
These are the plans that agents are writing in these key markets, and so they account for a lot of production across the board with these carriers. And I can't think of a time where they've just shut it down and suppressed and shut off commissions mid AEP.
Well, there's a lot to let's dig into it more. So I was kind of specifically talking about Aetna. And then to your point, Anthem just announced like 2 hours ago, hey, same thing, just kidding. We were doing all these gamesmanship and, we were trying to suppress plans and paper apps only, but now we're still getting more enrollments than we wanted. We've got to blacklist or delist all these plans and suppress them. And even suppressing wasn't enough. Now it's just like, hey, just kidding. We're going to make all these plans non-commissionable. And so for me, that's the hard part.
We'd heard Aetna or Anthem did this Jimmy rigged thing where they tried to make it so you could only write the PPOs with paper apps at the beginning. And, you can do it, but we're going to make it really hard for you to figure out how to do it and go back in time if you really want to shove the business on us, and now that wasn't enough.
Yeah, well, and even with that, we talked about it too, that I wasn't a fan of it because it took us back in time, 10 years of all this progress and sophistication in the industry and e-apps and tools. And to be honest, call recording and e-applications provides a lot more compliance and visibility. When you go back to paper applications, you don't have nearly as much oversight in what's happening. There's a lot more fraud. There's a lot more compliance issues. And so that's not helpful to the industry. And so I had a big issue with that. But not only that, MA is like the sacred cow. Mm-hmm. That is the thing. If you look at, Medicare in general, and you have PDP, you have MedSups, and you have Medicare Advantage, that's the sacred cow.
And it's been the trend and the growth in the industry for the past 12, 15 years.
Yeah. And so to go after that, again, United Healthcare even came out early on and said before AEP and said, hey, everybody, here's some H numbers that are not going to be commissionable. Just
same with
up.
Humana, a handful of them. Yep.
And you knew at least where they stood. And I kind of go, the reason I have a hard time with it with Aetna and Anthem doing this now, and I should say Elevance, call them by their proper name, but it's like their top brass in leadership knew. They knew. The broker managers and the directors and the regionals, they might not have known, but they were all out there banging the drum saying, go sell for us, go sell. Nope, if these plans wouldn't have been viable or profitable, we would have pulled them. But we're good, go sell them. And so now a pivot in direction, I go, are your actuaries that bad? Are you that incompetent? Do you really, can you not figure this out? And so I have an issue with that ultimately, and it's the lack of communication and how they did it and giving somebody 2 days to prepare, because ultimately too, you have to find that some brokers, agencies, organizations came up with their marketing plans prior to AEP, had in-depth discussions about where are the areas, okay, cool, you're going to SAR that area, perfect, we want to be a good partner and we don't want to target those areas and grow there. You're pulling these plans there because they're not viable and profitable, great. Tell us where we can grow. And the message was, put your foot on the gas and grow membership there. And so for them to kind of do this move is, in my opinion, it's a really bad move.
Yeah, I've got, more thoughts on it as well as why it's bad, why it's negative. And I think the reason why it's shaped up like that, and I haven't had the opportunity to literally go cross-reference these areas where there were high SAR amounts from areas like Humana and things like that, but I know there is a correlation, and I'm going to dig into the actual areas and the H codes, but areas where Humana had SARs, well, across the board, a lot of that membership is moving towards Aetna and Anthem. And I know specifically, just talking to agents anecdotally, that's happening.
Right.
And what I think happened was Aetna and Anthem didn't necessarily plan to have that kind of growth there. And they were probably these plans that were on the tilt financially anyway. And now they're seeing a disproportionate growth in plans that they didn't necessarily want to grow in. And they're knee-jerk reacting, right? They're like, oh, how do we shut this down? How do we slow this down? But I just, like you said,
if they can't handle it, they should have sunset the plan then.
Correct. And this is, I said I had multiple issues of it, and this is what I think is going to happen. And it's very short-sighted by the carriers, in my opinion, because CMS is going to get involved, right? Because what's going to happen is now if I'm an agent and let's say there's 4 filed plans in an area and one of those is non-commissionable, what am I going to do just naturally? Show me your comp plan. I'll show you your behavior. Well, I'm not going to present that plan to Mr. and Mrs. Client that are sitting there before. And now you're essentially steering them based on compensation and based on a lack of compensation to a plan that you're going to get compensated on. And that's the very crux and the basis of all these issues that CMS had issues with, was they want it to be fairsies across the board. If you decide that you're going to file a plan and you're going to be in that area and you're going to operate and you're going to pay commissions, you've got to stick with that, right? I think they've got to force the carriers to live with the decisions and not be able to willy-nilly, flip the switch, because it's leading to an extremely bad precedent in the industry where carriers are just going to think, oh, well, flip the commissions on or off in these different plans here and there. And it creates so much convolution and lack of trust in the industry. And the other reason why I have a problem with it, just before, so I don't lose my train of thought, is if you have a client and they go out and they search healthcare.gov or medicare.gov or whatnot, and they find this plan and they go to their agent and they're like, hey, I'd like to get on this Aetna plan, this Anthem plan. And the agent's like, I don't know if that's available. That's not available to me, or I don't see it in my quoting thing. It creates a lack of distrust from the broker. And therefore, we get that back from the agents as well, because they come to us and they're like, why isn't this in my Sunfire? I see it on Medicare.gov. And it's like, bro, you didn't pay attention to the suppressed list, because now it's just a whole layer of context that these agents have to pay attention to so they can do a good job for the beneficiary. And my final thoughts are, I think it puts these enrollment platforms like Sunfire and Connecture in a really precarious, bad spot, because ultimately the carriers are their biggest clients, their biggest source of revenue. And when the carriers come to them and they're like, hey, shut this plan off, suppress this, we don't want it to show, so it's not quotable. They kind of have no other choice than to just delist it, so to say.
Well, they can't get revenue from sales from it either. So if you're Sunfire and you connect your DRX and, suddenly the carriers come to you and say, hey, suppress all these plans and don't make them available on your platform, how many hundreds of thousands of enrollments just go missing, right? And you can't control that. But the bigger thought that I had too is going back to, so who's going to do the work, right? And it's all, so now you have all these, we talked about earlier in the year, the PDP commissions that are all not available. And we talked about some of the brokers who are willing to say, hey, I'll forego my small $50, $75, whatever PDP commission. I'll just help my client because I'm getting paid on the med sup. You have some of the brokers willing to do that, but some of them are like, nope, here's your Medicare supplement. Call Medicare.gov and they'll help you with the PDP. And Medicare.gov, I can tell you, does not have the staffing and the resources and the know-how to
or the expertise.
Yeah, to handle all this. And so who does the work then in this scenario where you have all these marketplace, and ultimately I'm talking about trying to be a fiduciary and do the right thing for the consumer. I've got people on Medicare who want help, they want guidance, they need somebody to give them an honest walkthrough of all these plans and advise them on which one would be the most beneficial for them. And if you're a broker in a lot of these marketplaces, are you just pro bono? You're just supposed to make no money. So even though like the current administration announced, $500 million for navigators, $100 million per year for the next 5 years. Well, what about for Medicare now? Like, who's going to do this work? You just expect brokers to do it all for free and make no commissions? We've talked about how hard it is anyway. So I guess that's the biggest thing, that ultimately it harms the consumer. They don't have the resources or access to brokers that they need to help them enroll in a plan. And again, it's a very bad precedence for everything. And
for me, I'm seeing these agents, reading the forum. We have forums and ourselves. We talk to a lot of these agents, and a lot of these agents they're just seeing their money being systematically eliminated out of the industry, right? You start at the beginning of the year and go, well, our FMO is going to be out of the industry. Is that compensation mechanism change? Are we losing HRAs? Are we losing all these different compensation mechanisms? And then you have PDPs going non-commissionable. And then now you have more and more MAs that have historically been able to be rely on going, hey, we're not going to pay commissions. And you have agents that are freaking out and they're tapping out of the industry. Right. And I think that's good for a certain percentage of the agents that are unskilled, untrained, unprofessional to get out of the industry. It really does benefit us, but we are trying to recruit. We want the best and the brightest agents out there to be able to help people with their health and wealth. And it gets to a point where you start having good quality agents and people go, well, screw it. I'm just out of the industry. I mean, I can't deal with this inconsistency and this back and forth. And so it's just really another arrow in the trust and the morale of the agents. Meanwhile, we're still waving the flag like, hey guys, we can still do a great job. We're still killing it, blah, 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 blah. But you have agents that are out, they've already written a handful of these policies in these areas and they're doing well with it. And now it's like the rug gets pulled out from them and they sit and go, if I'm an agent and I already placed a bunch of business from October 15th to now on these Anthem and these Aetna plans, what do I think is going to happen next year to those plans?
Think about this too, is you're a broker, you talk to a consumer on October 13th in the pre-sale window and you show them one of these particular plans and then they call you back 2 weeks later and you go, I'm sorry, I can't even sign you up for that plan anymore. I don't have a paper application, a way to do it. They took it off of all the enrollment platforms. I guess just call the government directly and they can try to sign you up for that. I can't be your broker. I can't be your agent. Nope. Can't drive down the street here to my shop to support you. You're on your own.
But not only that, all these people, all the business that has been placed in those plans, is that a canary in the coal mine for you're going to have to SAR those plans next year?
Very well could be.
If you're already so non-profitable and you're already pumping the brakes to suppress and non-commission those plans right now, what makes me think that you're going to be able to turn that around by plan year next year and keep those, and that those members aren't just going to end up having to be SAR'd next year?
I'll tell everybody listening that if you see those star ratings not improve or drop a half a star rating, you can plan on that. Pretty much. So that's my thought. But ultimately, and I guess maybe lastly, the thoughts that I have is saying like, come on, like, and this would be more to CMS with all this too, is that, they came out hard this last year with their call letter with, so many regulations and implementations and wanting things to be fair and to clean up, and compensation was squarely like in their eyesight. They really wanted to rein in, steering and brokers and agencies and FMOs selling these products over the others. And now here we are, and we're in a situation where there is now really visible going to be steering in the marketplace of selling certain products that where a broker can even get compensation and make a commission versus others. So, whatever they set out to do and achieve this last year obviously didn't work.
Yeah, and my message, if we have any carrier friends that listen, we have lots of carrier friends that listen to this, but Aetna in particular, right before this happened, they moved on from their CEO, Karen Lynch, right?
Yeah, that's her name.
And this industry is a copycat industry. And what happened, you just saw it this week. Aetna announces they're going to suppress and go non-commissionable with these important MA plans. And then what happens? Anthem comes out and is like, oh, well, they took the first salvo of arrows. Let's do that too. And you have these carriers that, will follow suit. And if you don't think that there's a lot of crossover in leadership and they're all working, they all talk and work together. How are you reading this? What are you going to do? There's a lot of that goes on. And what happens to my carrier friends is we need to rebuild trust and credibility and all these flipping switches. And we're eroding the trust and the foundation of the brokers and the Medicare beneficiaries.
Yeah, that consumer,
And the consumers, they hear it, they feel it too. And that's what we need to rebuild and come together as regulators, as CMS, as carriers, and as a broker distribution community, is come together. And how can we work together ultimately for the benefit of the beneficiary and rebuild this trust? And if we all do a good job, we can profit off it.
Well, they're going to continue to bang the drum and say, that's why you don't want Medicare disadvantage. Don't get, that. I mean, and lastly, to add to that too, I was notified today by WellCare as well. They're not making plans non-commissionable, but they're adding some more H numbers to their suppress list. And they did say, we will continue to pay commissions. These plans will be suppressed. You can write them still, and we will pay commissions, but they're even, adding in, we'll call it an addendum and some additional plans to it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, for the most part, the WellCare and Humana and UHC that had announced prior to AEP, the plans that were already suppressed were kind of like the plans that agents didn't really want to write anyway. They're low funding, they're low star, they're low performing, they're in areas that were probably struggling anyway. The Anthem and the Aetna ones were a little bit of a swift kick, because they were the plans that agents were looking towards.
they were lead products.
Yeah, lead products that agents were going, hey, your plan's being SAR'd in this area. However, I've got, this other company is looking good. We can get you on this product. And now it's like, where are you placing those lives?
And the CSNP is surprising to me just because of the reimbursement environment that's much higher on the CSNP too. So that one to me was really surprising. But anyways, I think we could go on and on about that, but we got to bring this home, and we still want to talk about one more thing before we wrap. So, but anyways, to summarize, we're pretty disappointed that we are where we are in the industry with as far as Medicare. How crazy is it that in the ACA line of business or the marketplace, we're going, hey, things look really positive. The outlook's great. We're crushing it. It's all positive. Boy, Medicare just went from bad to worse to, hey, it's okay, to worse to, it's been a roller coaster this last year. And I really, as a business perspective, like we're as a business thriving and doing very well and growing. So it's good for us. But I just think that, I feel so bad for the broker out there and for the consumer ultimately, because I just think that they deserve better. But anyways.
And what it reiterates to me, Dan, is what we've been talking about since early this year, where FMOs and care, it's going to be one of these pick your partners. Who do you have the relationships of trust with? Who can you go out into the marketplace and know, hey, I at least know what I'm dealing with. I've had things clearly communicated to me. We can deal with that. We can deal with the changes and the bumps in the road, but there has to be that transparency. And, a lot of times the carriers that we're saying, hey guys, place business here. Here's why we like these guys. Here's why we like these guys. We've kind of turned out to be right on,
Right.
And anyway, let's segment to our final segment of our trio here today.
Yep.
Do you want to?
Sure.
You want to take it?
I'll kind of talk about it and announce it. We'll probably have a big announce coming up in a few weeks on a podcast episode, but I'm going to, I guess, foreshadow.
Let the cat out of the bag.
I'm going to foreshadow. Mike and I have been talking for a long time about doing a bigger national event, and we've been wanting to do it for a while. We're always really wrapped up in, doing the podcast. I mean, for some of you really understand how much work and production value and cost and time and effort goes into making our podcast. And I would say that we don't see financial gain from doing the podcast other than, we do have a lot of growth.
Intrinsic, extrinsic.
Yeah, there's a lot of
external
intrinsic.
value.
There's a lot of intrinsic value to it, and I think it's valuable to our carrier partners. It's valuable to the industry. It's why we do it, and we really like it.
We make a few dollars on YouTube too.
Yeah, we just say like
almost enough to pay for a sandwich.
Auto promote,
Yeah.
For more. But but so we've been growing our podcast presence kind of in the space. But as far as we've always done kickoffs, and we've been doing agent conferences, top producer summits. We've been doing smaller events. And even, this year we've been doing larger trainings at our office, a Medicare kickoff, an ACA kickoff. But we as a company put in a lot of time and effort to all these different events. And so we just landed on the decision that we actually think we're going to focus a lot of the time, the effort, the money, and the resources into doing a bigger national event. It's likely going to be in Las Vegas. Destination TBD. We're looking at venues and costs and everything else, but we're going to be doing it as more of a kickoff event. And it's part of that other reason too is that I at least feel, and if you're a carrier, broker, manager, director, or somebody in a role, you can relate to this. The kickoffs have just gotten like way out of control. Like there's just, if you're a carrier, you have to go do one in this state or 5 in this state and then a regional one and then for this FMO and for that partner. And you're on a road show for 2 months doing a bazillion kickoffs, and it's expensive and it's exhausting, and you're in front of like these very small audiences and groups. And so what we're announcing is that we're putting together a national event. It's a come one, come all. Everybody's invited. And that goes to all you agents out there. It doesn't matter which FMO you're with, come to it, participate. It's going to be worthwhile. Carrier partners too, we're going to be in discussions with you about coming to participate. And it's going to encompass both Medicare and ACA. And that's what we also think is lacking, is there's a lot of different industry events that are focused for Medicare only or ACA only. And this is going to be a meeting and a blending of all of it in a really good time period of year, where we can really talk about the upcoming Medicare AEP and the marketplace about OE that's coming up. And even if you won't be able to have like solid benefit numbers, it's a time of year where we envision it. We want to make it to where it's valuable, and there's going to be topics and actual takeaways from our broker partners, where if you're coming to it, it's not like just talking about warm and fuzzy things. You actually get something valuable that you're taking away. And for the carrier partners, we feel like it's going to provide a location and a space and an opportunity for you to have discussions with multiple partners and even our competitors. If you're a competing FMO, you're welcome to come. Have all those sidebar discussions, have business strategy meetings, negotiate co-op dollars and goals and everything else, and maybe you can meet with 10 or 15 of your partners in one venue versus going on 15 trips. And so that's kind of what we're envisioning with our event that we're going to be putting together next year, because again, we're always looking at things in the industries that are lacking. We think that some of the other events are amiss because of how focused they are on one topic or line of business and time of year and participants. And so we just think that we have a vision for this larger event. So it's announced. I let the cat out of the bag. We're going to do it. If you're a vendor, one of our competitors, or you're one of the carriers and you want to get in touch with us, we're going to be making all those preliminary discussions now. Reach out to us and let us know how you want to participate as we're piecing everything together right now.
Yeah, just to clarify, Dan and I, we love, our friends at Medicarians and Justin with Medicare Con. They've done a great job on those events, and they generally take place within about a week or two of each other, early on
March,
in the year.
April, yeah.
March, early April, and we'll be participating at both of those events. And Medicarians,
you're speaking.
I am. We haven't even announced that yet. Yeah.
Oh, all right.
I'm a top.
Sorry,
I was one of the top 50 announced. We didn't do anything special, but
I stole your thunder.
They've done a fantastic job of building that into an industry trade show. Big dollars, and one of the things that I think will make our show a little bit different is the time of year is important for us, because Dan and I, we've literally been talking about this for I think 5 years straight.
It's true. COVID ruined it at first.
Yeah, we spend so much time and effort on our annual kickoff, and it's a fairly large cost anyway of our rollout. And what Dan had just said is we've identified the fact that now not only our local regional carriers, but all carriers nationwide, there's more of a national focus than there used to be. It used to be a very slim margin of national rollout, and then there's so many more agencies and entities that sell cross-state, that sell, in other regions, that you almost have to do more regional rollouts and national rollouts, and the carriers are running themselves ragged in the fall. And so this event is going to be a beacon for all the carriers to come and basically be like, whether it be from a national perspective, here's what we're doing nationally, and you can have breakouts to your regions, and you're going to get a lot of high-value agents and industry partners there as well. So there's going to be a lot of value for the carriers as well. And then we're going to do it the second or third week of September. So for our friends and our industry connections in the ACA side of things, there's also tremendous value there too. So there'll be an agent component where it's like, what can you come learn, best practices, takeaways, things that you can literally implement for your business for annual enrollment and open enrollment on the ACA side of things, lead vendors that you can connect with, technology stacks, training, other agents, networking. And then for the carriers, you can go handle a lot of your business. You can have co-op meetings, with carrier partners. You can go, strategize and take a major shift off of your rollouts. I mean, there was carriers, I think they did like 50 different micro rollouts. That's just not sustainable. I mean, you're getting ran ragged. You could, eliminate a couple of those and do it at this time.
Right.
And then for our other industry friends, all the ancillary products, the dental, vision, hearings, the cancer, critical illnesses, they're going to have a whole opportunity to get in front of all of this agent ecosystem as well. And then we're going to curate content and essentially tracks for those 3 segments, right? What do you get as an agent? What's the value there? If you're an industry, carrier, a partner like that, what can you learn and benefit from collaborating with other, minds in the industry? And then the ancillary people and the industry friends, like how do you go and collaborate? What can you offer? And we're going to build our vendor floor there as well. Mm-hmm. Just, we've been doing these events at a fairly large scale for an FMO, where we get hundreds of people anyway and fly our carrier partners out. And randomly, a lot of people don't know this, but I actually ran the largest Halloween and horror events where we had 20,000 people coming to a big Halloween show every year. So we've ran massive events in the past before, and we feel very confident of putting together a world-class event that's not meant to compete with or take away from some of our other friends in industry, but meant to fill that latter year gap.
Yep.
Where we can handle some business in the area where you can really have takeaways. So if you're a carrier partner, an industry friend that wants to be involved, hit us up early. We're going to have all of our sponsorship decks, and we're just kind of putting the final pieces there. It's literally been one of these things that's been years in development. It's not some, wild hair thing that we just came up with, but, as we're executing on all of our game plan and going through our vision planning for next year, we felt like it was the right time to get that out.
Well, and to clarify and to kind of give you an idea, like I'm going through my year-end planning right now to wrap up 2024 and focus on my growth strategy for 2025. And that was one of the things is we chose, but better for worse, we thought that, hey, should we focus on really doing the podcast and doing it well and growing it, or should we focus on the big event? And so, to give you an idea, both. But we knew that we couldn't in 1 year operate the business, really grow our ACA and IFP business as much as we have, and do the podcast and do the event and do it all. We had some limitations there. So now that we feel like everything with our growth, we've been able to stand up those other lines of business, develop those, get them to a great place. That's why we feel like we have this other focal point for our vision of what we want to execute. And I think it's going to be this event next year. Like I said, anybody listening, even if you're a competitor, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, it's FMO. It's FMO agnostic, right?
Exactly.
Like we're.
This is not going to be
an agent boost recruitathon.
This is not an agent boost event. We might be the hosts or the people kind of putting it together or putting it on, but this is going to be neutral ground for carriers and for the industry essentially. So, anyways, leave it at that probably for the day.
Yeah, if anyone wants to know more, hit us up.
Yeah,
for some early preview information.
That's probably a good spot to leave it at. We think we'll have a lot of interest from agents, from agencies, and from carriers. So, let us know. Again, it's wild this year. We keep saying it. And this episode, we couldn't even wait a day. We had to record it with Mike looking like a jackass in his gladiator.
One final thing. Do we get a call letter tomorrow? A 2025 call letter. It's Friday. It's the last Friday before the E word.
I would bet you we get it in November. I don't know that it's this Friday. I would be shocked if we don't have one in the next 2 weeks.
I don't think we'll get it tomorrow.
I don't think so either.
They wouldn't want to do anything that would, sway things one way or the other. I don't think.
Correct. I think whatever happens there, we're gonna have a call letter. My Dan prediction is in the next 2 weeks. End of November by the latest. Like I said, in the past, we've seen the call letters come out more like February, but I think it's going to be November. I think we're going to get one in about 2 weeks. That's my prediction. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll come on air and tell everybody that I was wrong. So.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Agent